Social Security is the one thing Americans thought they could always depend on. Yet now, even that promise feels uncertain. Nearly 70 million people, retirees, widows, disabled workers, rely on it to survive. And when asked, 79% of Americans said the same words: don't touch it. Not one cut, not one experiment, because for them, it's not politics, it's survival. You see, Social Security isn't a luxury. It's rent, it's food, it's medicine. It's the difference between living with dignity or falling into poverty after a lifetime of work. And still, every few years, politicians bring it up, talking about reform, adjustment, or restructuring. Harmless words on paper, but behind them lies fear. Fear that what's left of America's safety net could quietly be taken away. Imagine working 40 or 50 years, paying into a system you were told to trust, only to hear someone in Washington say it might not be there when you need it most. That's not a policy debate. That's betrayal. For generations, Social Security has been more than just money. It's been a promise that hard work would mean security in your later years. It's the foundation of trust between the people and their government. But lately that foundation has begun to shake. And so the question rises, why are Americans so protective of this program? Why does it strike such a deep emotional chord? The answer isn't just economic, it's moral. It's about fairness. It's about respect. It's about whether the country still honors those who built it. Today, we're going to explore that question deeply. Because if this promise breaks, it won't just affect seniors. It will change how every American thinks about aging, work, and trust itself. Let's take a step back for a moment and remember why Social Security exists in the first place. The year was 1935. America was still clawing its way out of the Great Depression. Banks had collapsed. Families had lost everything. And suddenly, millions of older Americans were facing something this country had never seen before: aging without a safety net. That's when President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed the Social Security Act, calling it a measure of protection against the hazards and vicissitudes of life. It was simple, really. You work, you contribute, and when you're too old to keep going, the system gives back. Not as charity, but as a promise. A handshake across generations. Over the years, that promise became sacred. For many families, that monthly check was the difference between groceries and hunger, heat and cold, dignity and despair. It was a quiet acknowledgement that the country hadn't forgotten you. But here's the thing. Social Security was never meant to make anyone rich. It was meant to keep people alive. And for millions, that's exactly what it does. Every month, checks go out to retirees, to people with disabilities, and to children who've lost their parents. Nearly 70 million Americans. Every one of them depending on a program that most people never think about, until it's threatened. When you really look at it, Social Security isn't just a government system, it's a reflection of a nation's values. It says that after a lifetime of work, your worth doesn't disappear. You still matter. Your life still has value. It's about respect for labor, respect for contribution, and respect for the human spirit. And yet, after almost a century, that foundation is shaking again. We're hearing new phrases: trust fund depletion, benefit cuts, raising the retirement age. They sound technical, harmless even, until you imagine what they mean for someone living on a fixed income. When you've built your life around that check, $100 less a month isn't small. It's the difference between paying for your heart medicine or skipping it. That's not a statistic. That's a person. That's America's neighbor, sitting quietly at the kitchen table, looking at the bills and whispering, "Please, just let me make it one more month." So before we talk about reforms, let's remember what this program was built for. Not profit, not politics, but human survival. The idea that no one who worked their entire life should ever be left behind. That's where this story begins, and where our national conscience is now being tested. There's a reason 79% of Americans draw that line in the sand and say, "Don't touch it." Because for them, Social Security isn't a government benefit. It's a lifetime contract. It's the only part of the system that still feels like a fair deal. You work, you pay, and when the time comes, you get something back. Simple, honest, predictable. And in a world that feels more uncertain every year, that predictability means everything. Let me tell you what this really looks like. There's a retired bus driver in Ohio, worked 46 years without missing a single paycheck. He told me, "Professor, that check that comes on the third Wednesday, that's my lifeline. Without it, I'd lose my house in 2 months." Or the widow in Arizona who said, "It's not just money. It's the only time I feel the government remembers I exist." That's the truth so many forget. Social Security isn't about politics or policy charts. It's about people, about survival, trust, and dignity. You see, Americans have 3 deep emotional reasons for saying no to cuts. The first is fear. Not irrational fear, but the real, everyday fear of not having enough to live. When a third of retirees depend solely on that check, any change feels like a threat to their existence. The second is distrust. They've seen it before. Promises made, promises broken. Politicians saying reform when they mean reduce. Voters remember those moments, and once trust is lost, it rarely comes back. And the third is fairness. For decades, workers paid every cent of their payroll taxes without question. They did their part. They didn't cheat, didn't delay, didn't opt out. And now they're told the system might not hold up. That's not just numbers. That's betrayal. Think about it. For generations, Americans were taught that hard work is sacred, that if you contribute, you'll be rewarded. That's the moral fabric of the nation. But when that promise starts to unravel, something much bigger than a program is at stake. The belief that effort still matters. So when people say, "Don't touch my Social Security," it's not anger. It's grief. It's exhaustion. It's the sound of millions of honest workers saying, "We did our part. Don't take that away." And maybe, deep down, it's a quiet reminder that in America, the fight for dignity never really ends. Walk through almost any American town today, and you'll see the quiet truth of how fragile life has become for older people. You'll find 70-year-olds working the morning shift at the grocery store, smiling as they bag groceries for families half their age. You'll see older veterans at Walmart greeting customers with a kindness that hides the exhaustion in their eyes. They're not there because they want to stay busy. They're there because they can't afford not to be. The cost of living has outpaced the promises made. Food, rent, medication, all climbing faster than that yearly cost of living adjustment on Social Security checks. Last winter, heating bills in parts of the Midwest doubled. For seniors on fixed incomes, that meant choosing between keeping the house warm or filling their prescriptions. One woman in Michigan told me quietly, "I turn the thermostat down and wear 3 sweaters. I save the money for insulin. That isn't a statistic. That's real life." For millions, every dollar matters. $10 less on the grocery bill means a week without fresh fruit. A small increase in rent means skipping the phone plan that keeps them connected to their children. And yet, these are the people who built this country, the ones who worked the factories, taught the classes, fought the wars. Now they stand in pharmacy lines, counting out bills and wondering, is this what retirement was supposed to feel like? And the truth is, many are too proud to complain. They simply adapt. They stretch meals, skip small joys, and tell themselves, "It's okay, someone else probably needs it more." But underneath that quiet resilience is a deep sadness. The realization that after a lifetime of labor, comfort should not be a privilege. I met a retired nurse from Florida, 72 years old, who said, "If my Social Security check goes down, I'll have to move into my car. And that's the part no one talks about. We're running out of options." That's the America many don't see. The silent crisis playing out in living rooms and trailer parks across the nation. It's not loud, it's not violent, but it's there, in the eyes of people just trying to make it through another month. And that's why 79% of Americans hold on so fiercely. Because when you've seen how thin the line is between survival and despair, you understand. This isn't about politics. It's about whether we still care for our own. Now, let's talk about the debate, the one that never really goes away. Every few years, it rises again like a storm on the horizon. Politicians step up to microphones and say, "We need to fix Social Security before it's too late." But the question is, fix it for whom? And at whose expense? The truth is, the Social Security Trust Fund is facing pressure. By the early 2030s, the money flowing in from workers' paychecks may not be enough to cover all the benefits going out. Economists call it an imbalance. But for ordinary people, it sounds like a threat. It means that if nothing changes, future retirees might see smaller checks or delays in payments. So what are the solutions being discussed? Some say raise the payroll tax, make higher earners contribute more. Others say increase the retirement age again, tell people to work longer before they can collect. And some suggest privatization, letting individuals invest their own savings instead of relying on the government system. But none of these ideas come without consequences. Raising taxes hits workers who are already struggling. Raising the retirement age punishes those whose bodies can't endure another 5 years of labour. And privatization? Well, it sounds empowering until the next market crash wipes out half your savings. So each option carries its own kind of risk, its own kind of pain. Meanwhile, the generations are drifting apart. Younger Americans look at their pay stubs and think, "I'm paying into a system that won't be there for me." And older Americans look at those same paychecks and say, "I paid my whole life. Don't you dare take it away now." Both feel cheated, both feel unheard, and in that tension, something deeper is breaking down: trust. Because when you peel away the politics, this isn't just an economic issue, it's a moral one. It's about whether America still honors its word, whether promises made by one generation will be kept by the next. And that question, that single question, will define what kind of country we really are in the decades ahead. Some people say the system can't last forever, maybe not in its current form. But what we choose to replace it with will reveal everything about our values. Do we still believe in community, in solidarity, in the idea that no one should face old age alone? Or have we decided that everyone's on their own now? That's the debate that matters most. And it's one this country can no longer afford to ignore. There's an old saying, "A society is judged by how it treats its most vulnerable." And if that's true, then how we handle Social Security will tell the next generation exactly who we are. Because this isn't just a debate about numbers. It's about people, your parents, your neighbours, maybe even you one day. For those already retired, the advice I give is simple. Protect what you have, but don't lose your voice. Reach out to your representatives. Let them know these are not just budget lines, these are lives. Keep track of your benefits, stay informed, and be part of the conversation. Silence in times like this is dangerous. For those still working, especially younger Americans, don't tune out. I know it's easy to think this doesn't affect you yet, but one day it will. Social Security isn't just for the old. It's a system that touches every generation. The contributions you make today are what sustain your parents and grandparents, and someday someone else's paycheck will sustain you. That's the circle of trust that keeps a nation strong. If you can, start planning early, build small savings, learn about investment basics, about healthcare planning, about long-term costs. It's not glamorous, but it's powerful. Financial independence gives you options, and in a system that feels uncertain, options are strength. But beyond money, there's something even more important. The moral thread that runs through this entire issue: compassion. Compassion for those who've carried heavy loads, raised families, and worked through decades when life wasn't easy. Many of them didn't have 401ks or private pensions. Social Security is their lifeline. I once spoke to a retired teacher in Pennsylvania who said, "It's not about getting more. It's about not being forgotten." That sentence stayed with me, because that's really what this is about, the fear of being left behind. So yes, let's talk about budgets and reforms and future generations. But let's not forget the faces behind the numbers. Every policy affects a person. Every decision has a heartbeat attached to it. If there's one thing we can all agree on, regardless of politics, It's that growing old shouldn't feel like a punishment. It should be a chapter of peace, of reflection, of gratitude. And protecting Social Security, that's part of protecting that peace. Because in the end, it's not just about money, it's about dignity, about the promise that after a lifetime of work, you still belong, you're still valued, and you're still seen. So here we are, nearly 90 years after Social Security was born, and the question remains, will America keep its promise? Because this isn't just another policy issue. It's the soul of how we treat one another. It's a reflection of whether we still believe that every generation deserves a measure of security after a lifetime of giving. Think about it. The people receiving those checks today are the same ones who built the roads we drive on, who taught our children, who fought in wars we barely remember. They carried this country through decades of change, through crisis and recovery, through sacrifice and resilience. They kept their end of the deal. And now they're simply asking us to keep ours. When 79% of Americans say, "Don't touch Social Security," they're not shouting out of fear, they're standing out of love. Love for the idea that work should mean something, that aging shouldn't mean disappearing, that the nation still cares for those who made it possible. And maybe they're reminding us that compassion isn't weakness. It's the strongest currency a country can have. So I'll ask you, what do you think should happen next? Should we raise contributions so the system lasts longer? Should we reform it to protect those who need it most? Or should we rethink how we define retirement altogether? I'd like to hear your thoughts. Tell me in the comments, what does Social Security mean to you or to someone you love? Because the truth is, this story isn't over. Every voice, every vote, every honest conversation shapes what comes next. And maybe that's how the promise survives. Not through politics, but through people refusing to let it fade. If you're watching this and you depend on Social Security, or you have parents who do, know this, you're not forgotten. There are millions who stand with you, who still believe in fairness, in dignity, in a promise that's worth keeping. And if you're younger, remember one day this story will be yours too. So protect it now while you can, because in protecting them, you're protecting your own future. Social Security isn't charity, it's gratitude. It's the quiet thank you of a nation to those who built it. And if we ever lose that, we'll lose more than a program. We'll lose part of who we are. So let's keep the promise. Together.